Hey there everybody, this is going to be a helpful video about using GIMP to resize your images for web pages. Now if you haven't already watched the video about using GIMP on the class schedule, there's a video about using GIMP and it kind of goes through the basics of GIMP. You need to watch that first. GIMP is, again, it is a digital image manipulation program, and with it we're going to be able to bring in images that we have stored. Perhaps you've taken these with your camera, perhaps you've made them, perhaps you've downloaded them, perhaps someone's made them for you, whatever it is. We're going to need perhaps to manipulate them, and there are lots of ways to do this. Perhaps you want to continue using the Dreamweaver tools, perhaps not. If you don't have Dreamweaver, you got to use something else. And GIMP is an open source and open and free to the public. So I have GIMP up. Now I'm going to go to a folder that has pictures in it. This is simply a image folder that has some basic source images for Windows, and it doesn't really matter as long as you know where your folder is and what you've got. I just want to kind of go over some basic things about this. Now, one of the things I can do is I can create I can take an image, and I can take that image and I can drag it into my desktop. So I'm going to take this little garden 1 image and I'm going to drag it not to my desktop but into my garden area here. And I'm going to enlarge this screen. One of the first things you need to know is how big is this actual image. And so to understand how big the actual image is, I'm going to go up to Image, and I'm going to go up to Canvas Size, and it will tell me that that image is 1024 pixels wide by 768 pixels tall. Now that's the canvas size. The canvas size is the actual space in which you're working with on your canvas here. If I use the plus or minus tools, and if I look up here at the canvas area, I've got 1024 pixels wide by 768 pixels tall. The image could actually be smaller than that or bigger than that based on the size of your actual image. The canvas is that window, if you will, that you're working within. The canvas, just like if you were to paint on something, you could have a canvas the size of an 8 by 10 image, and you could paint something within that space the size of a thumb, a stamp, or you could paint. Obviously, you can't paint on a canvas bigger outside of those boundaries, but you actually can in the computer. I can actually have a picture that is larger than the actual size of the canvas, and you can see that I can have a picture moved outside of that canvas region. And so what we want to do is we have to deal with two things. We have to deal with our size of our layer, and we have to deal with the size of the actual canvas itself. Well, let's say we wanted to make this image small. Well, much smaller than the size that it is right now. Maybe it was a 100 or a 200 pixel image. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is distort the picture. You see on websites a lot of times, let me see if I can give you a quick example that comes to my mind. If you're familiar with Weather Channel internet homepage, you see a lot of these pictures on the side of these people. If I go to the internet interact, this is where I typically see this, where you see these people's blogs. I don't see it here, but you'll see their pictures and they get really distorted. I think usually it has the pictures of the weathermen on it, and their blogs are really really distorted. Let me try this other one. I have another weather. And so what you want to do, over here, if the people's blogs pop up, usually their pictures get all distorted and they just look really bad. And so that was one example that popped into my head, but unfortunately I'm not seeing their examples of that aren't popping up. So one of the things we don't want to do is have our images get stretched out and look just really weird. And so we want to keep things consistent. So here's what I want to do. I'm gonna at least just scale this down. If I chose my layer, I can scale it down by going up to Layer, and I can go to Transform, and or not Transform, but Scale Layer. And what I can do is I can make this smaller. Now I usually work within the same proportions that I have, but once this is linked, you can keep the proportions the same. So even though I'm going to lower this down, let's say I'm going to go with a 200 pixel wide by a 200 pixel wide image, well then it's going to stay 150 to keep that aspect ratio the same. If I said scale, then I can then use my move tool, and I have an image then that is 200 pixels wide, and I'm going to keep it right square in the middle. Well, now that you'll notice that I have all this extra canvas space around it, and I don't want that. So what I need to do is go to my image, which is going to be what the actual size of the canvas is. I'm going to say the final image is, or I'm going to go to the canvas size, go to my canvas size, and then I'm going to type in 200 with that. And because these were not linked, actually, let me go back. I'm going to undo that. I knew that was 1024, and I'm going to enter that. I want to make sure these are linked together, and so I'm going to actually go to 200, and then when I change that, that should change that to 150. If I say resize, then it's got my canvas is rescales to this position, but I can take this and I can move this over and slide this into place. Now I also want to go down here and go to my 100% size, and I want to make sure that I get this low. Actually, I'm going to use the plus on key so I can see if I have any pardon me, if I have any blank space, and I want that to fit right in there just perfectly. Now notice that when I increase this 300%, the pixelation is it is pixelated. Now I don't want that. Obviously my actual size that I'll see it will be this size. So this image will not be pixelated. Okay? What you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have an image that is going to be scaled disproportionately, you know, and skewed in some way. Oops. Out of, oops, that's the wrong tool. You don't want to have that, you don't want to have that tool. What we don't want to do is have some kind of deformation on that object. Now I don't have my layer selected, and so we don't want any distortion whatsoever on that. And so like I wouldn't want to see my picture getting stretched out like this, where you have the I'm going to say scale, where you have pictures that are just stretched and skewed. That does not look professional. That does not look good. Keep things organized. And so now if I have this image, I can save it. So I can go to File, I'm going to export, and I'm going to export that image. Now I'm going to put it on my in my sample pictures. That's the folder that I had these in, and I'm going to call this you know, whatever that image is going to be. Let me sidebar 1 dash yellow flower. I'm going to say export, and it's being exported out as a JPEG. I want the quality to be 100%, and I'm going to say export. Now I always want to make sure that that is actually where I expect it to be. And so I'm going to go into my folder and go down to list, sidebar yellow flower. So here it is, and it's very small. And if I look down here, the dimensions are 200 by 150. So that image has been kept in its proper size, and it is there as I expected it to be. I can't remember what its original name was. but here it is. And I can use that then in my document, and I don't have any distortion, and I don't have any problems with it. Okay? So that's one way to manipulate your images using GIMP. That was very simple. Don't keep your images. Do not distort your images. Now let me show you something else. Here's another thing that I don't want you doing. So let's say we have a new document here. All right, let's say that we have a small image. Okay, let's say we want to make I'm going to make a new document, and I want this to be, let's say, a 400. Maybe I want to make a banner, and I want that banner to be 900 by 150. And I say, okay. So here is my document that I want to use. Okay, and this is going to be a banner for my website. I'm just going to move this out of the way. And let's say I go here, and let's say that I had a picture. Let's pretend that it isn't this sidebar picture, but let's say that I found a picture online of this little picture here. Okay, well, that picture, it fits within this space, right? So here's the actual space, and here's the picture. But let's say I wanted to move that or scale that picture into this space here. Well, what I don't want to do is take something like this and scale it up. Let me make sure I have the right layer selected and scale it up. I don't want to try to scale something like this. Is ridiculous. I wouldn't want to try to scale something that was small into something like this. Well, there's a couple things happening here that's just not very appealing. First of all, you get a lot of distortion with your image. So here's my original image, although the colors could be nice, and maybe this would be something you could use if you blurred it out and use some effects perhaps. But here's the problem. If we get into this and I look at this at 100%, notice these jagged little edges here. You don't want that. That's a problem from using an image that was small and then made large. You don't want to be doing that sort of thing. That produces very bad artifacts. So if you don't have a big image to begin with, don't start with a small image and try to scale it up, because your image will look very cheap and very unprofessional. So that is something that you have to consider when you're doing these things. If your image won't work from the beginning, do not try to force it. All right, that's all I want to say about GIMP right now and resizing images.